Hey everyone, my name is Robert. I'm a product designer, and for the last 5 years I've been working on a very special project redesigning and rebuilding the electronic medical record. This product, whatever you want to call it, is called Healthcare OS. My startup called Alloy Healthcare aims to bring Healthcare OS to market at some point in the future. I make these videos weekly to talk a little bit about the process that I use as a designer to try to start a startup and all the struggles and things that I think about. And this week I want to talk a little bit about marketing and talk a little bit about branding and why those things are important even for something that doesn't exist. Let's get into it. So one of the biggest challenges with creating any product is, how do you talk about it? How do you tell people about it? And what does it look like? How do you visualize it to people who haven't used it yet? This is all the realm of branding and marketing and communication and messaging and all these different things. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking a lot about value-based care and how I think value-based care may play a really integral part in bringing a new electronic medical record to the market. But one of the challenges with that, or just generally with bringing something to the market, is letting people know it exists. So this week, I've been focusing a lot more on marketing and branding, and some of that has been some nitty-gritty work around migrating some email lists and blog posts that I've made in the past, and some of it is a little bit more, shall we say, philosophical and design-oriented in terms of what the things I need to be communicating about are, why they're important, and how in the world do I tell someone what this is. Ultimately, what this is going to end up being is what I'm calling Marketing Site V2 Beta. And what this means is there's going to be a new marketing site to replace what I have now, which is essentially just a couple paragraphs of text. But that marketing site, that full version is still a little bit in the works. There's still some work I need to do on the messaging, on what needs to be on it, that kind of thing. But I don't necessarily want to wait forever before I launch that. In fact, one thing I really want to do is I want to get a new marketing site up to own some content for myself, to start getting some SEO content based on a lot of the blogs and these videos that I make that I'll post there. There's a lot of good value that I can get from that. So I want to get that as quick as possible. At the same time, I want to give a little bit of a taste and teaser to what that new marketing site with the V2 final will be. So before we can get into talking about the actual website and the decisions I need to make there, I want to talk about the difference between marketing and branding. Now, there are a lot of different schools of thought about the difference. So I'm not going to try to win you over to mine. I'm just going to tell you what my definition is, and particularly my definition based on where on the stage I'm in. And this is really critical for anyone who's out there trying to start a business or trying to think about maybe starting a startup, is the stage that you're in can play a huge role in determining what exactly you need to do in terms of the marketing and branding. One of the core differentiators of my product is design, is user experience. And so that part of it needs to be communicated in the branding. Now, before I get too far into that, let's talk about the difference. Marketing, in my definition, and for our purposes and for my stage, I'll say, just for my situation as I'll define it, is really about the messaging and, importantly, measuring the messaging. When you put out a message, or when you put out an image or an idea into the world, that message or idea could take a lot of different formats. You could tell it over video, you could tell it in short form, it could be long form, you could use a quote to back it up, you could use data to back it up. You could use different you could phrase the sentence itself or the message itself in different ways with maybe with a kind of serious tone or a fun tone or a silly tone or a fellow kids tone, if you will. There's a lot of different ways that you could phrase that. But the way that you learn what is working in terms of those tones is by measuring it. What are people engaging with? What are people actually using or clicking through, or what are they watching? What are they engaging with? When I make these videos, I actually spend some time looking at similar metrics. I'm looking at how long are people watching? How long, how much of the video did they watch? Where did they stop watching? Where was the click-through rate? Where are they coming through from? Things like that. Those are the types of things that you talk about when you're talking about marketing. And for my purposes, when I talk about marketing, I'm talking about the measurable impact and the insights and the actions that can come from that based on what I'm putting out into the world. When I talk about branding, I'm talking about what it is that makes this company unique or this product unique. What are the value propositions that I have? What are the principles that this company or this thing is going to abide by? At the core, that's what a brand is, and that can be things like mission statement and value statements. That could be the product differentiator. That could be, the reason the product exists or the founder started it. I mean, there could be any number of things that go into branding. And I'm not going to do a whole branding video. There's a billion videos that you can go find about that, so I don't need to rehash that here. But for our purposes, that's the way I look at branding. So when I look at the branding for Alloy, I'm thinking about what are the philosophical things essentially that I want to communicate about. And when I think about marketing, I'm thinking about how do I measure the effectiveness and the engagement level of those concepts in different mediums and different formats, like a written post or a video here, or like a image, or importantly, a website. A website is one of the best ways, or one of the most important things that anybody needs to measure when you're talking about marketing. And thus we're arriving at this kind of marketing site version 2 beta. What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, as I mentioned, there are two things I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the branding, the philosophical side, and I'm thinking about the messaging and the measurement side. Now, one thing that I'm not going to show, and this gets a little tricky because I'm not just going to show it to you because I don't want to spoil too much here. But without spoiling too much and without getting into too many details about what it is, there are two decisions that I'm trying to make right now that will be very important and critical to the potential success of the beta version of this site. The first one is the main headline and value prop that's listed on the homepage. And the second is the detail to which I go about the actual product itself. Now, let's take those one step at a time. So the first one is the main value proposition. Now, for a long time now, I've kind of operated under with the value proposition that Healthcare OS is designed to be easier to use, that is designed to be simpler to use, and it's a smart solution for a very complicated, convoluted kind of system and market. Now, this can be represented in any number of ways through, simpler interfaces and UIs, simpler color palette, kind of removing a lot of the clutter, like one of those, like kind of the minimalist kind of idea. But what exactly is the statement that I use to talk about that? And when you hit a marketing site homepage, or when you sit any like kind of SaaS product homepage, you'll often see a big headline with a small headline and a button or maybe two buttons the most. And that big headline is kind of your main value proposition. Now, I'm going to pull up a website here that I use frequently. Product I use a lot, it's called Webflow. Webflow is a website builder. It's great. It's kind of a no-code tool, but it gives you a lot of the power that you get when you use a coded kind of CMS type product. I love it. I've built many a site on it, and I actually use it to build the Alloy Healthcare website. But one of the things I like, and I'm going to show this to you here, is the way they kind of talk about their value proposition. The site you want without the dev time. that's talking directly to a designer's POV. This is the site I want, but I don't want to take the time to design it or build it all and spend all this time building it. Now, it's also talking to the POV of a business who might need a good, slick marketing site, but doesn't have the capacity to hire and pay a bunch of engineers to build a big website. So Webflow has done a really great job of articulating their main value prop on their homepage. And then their call to action is start building. I'm in a similar position. Now, the value proposition statement that I'm using right now is empowering physicians to provide the best care. I love that statement. I love the way that is, to me, like, I love the idea that this thing that I'm making is empowering someone to do something really amazing, and that thing is providing the best care that they can as a physician. The subheadline, we are redesigning the EMR from the ground up to empower physicians to focus on people, not their computer, which is a big value driver. I mean, that's something that a lot of physicians say. I've heard that on a number of occasions. Physicians don't want to look at their computer when they're dealing with patients. Like, that's a big deal. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily speak to the business proposition, which I think the Webflow site did very subtly. It spoke to the idea that the physician, the person who's building the website doesn't have to spend all this time, this dev time doing it. That's a lot of time, money, energy, etc., etc. Sorry about that. Battery died on the camera. So what was I saying? Oh, right. So I like that headline, but it doesn't necessarily speak to some of the business side of what Alloy Healthcare could be. Now, to be fair, I'm still trying to figure that out. And part of this marketing site will be the idea that I can kind of measure who is interested in this. But the other headline idea I have is powering the next generation of private practices. Now, I like that for two reasons. One, we're still talking about this idea of empowering, people to start something. But the other thing I really like about this is that there's this trend that happens in healthcare over the course of, I think, about 30-year increments. And it's where we see this trend of private practices disappearing, private practices coming back. And I talked about this in a few videos ago, but we're basically kind of at the tail end, or coming to the tail end, I think, of this kind of lack or evaporation of private practices right now. So there's a theory that private practices will start coming back. And so there's kind of this idea that, like, we're kind of preparing for that next generation of practices, like these next people who are going to be taking care of our communities, taking care of our cities. Like, this is for them. This is for what they are doing. And I like that. I like that idea. I like the idea of, like, kind of empowering them or powering them. Like, this is the thing that kind of, they flip the lights on in the morning and they flip on Healthcare OS in the morning and boom, their practice is up and running. And it's that easy. It's that simple. It's just super easy. The headline that goes with that is, we are redesigning the EHR or EMR. Kind of ambivalent towards this term, but we redesign the EHR from the ground up to empower physicians to start, manage, and run their practices. Again, slightly more on the kind of action-oriented side of, like, what exactly Healthcare OS is designed to do. Now, the problem here is that I don't have yet all of the content to back up that second headline. I do have the content to back up the first one because I see all these videos as part of that. One of the main calls to action for this landing page or for this beta version of the site is like a mission statement, manifesto, and all of these videos and posts that I've done for the last several years. So I don't know. Like, this is the thing. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know what I'm going to go with yet, and I have not decided. The part of me that, like, wants to see this turn to a business says we need to use the private practice. Next generation private practices one, because that is speaking directly to who is using this software. But at the same time, the empowering physicians to provide the best care is a little bit more philosophical and feel good, to the point that it feels like it's more aspirational, because I don't know for sure that private practice is going to be the thing. I'm still trying to figure out how private practice is the thing, if that makes sense. So I don't know. Again, I'm not totally sure. That's still to be determined. Now, the second decision, or the second challenge with this site is how much of Healthcare OS do I show? Now, this is the beta version of website v2. Website v2, not beta, full release 2.0 will be a full-blown marketing site talking about Healthcare OS as if it were a real product you could sign up for. The reason for that is because I want to be able to show and figure out which features are the most important, how do I talk about those features, and who in the private practice, direct care, value-based care practice, maybe small integrated delivery network, who in those ecosystems is most interested in something like this. And at least, again, leaning on my strengths right now, the best way I can think to do that is to launch a marketing site, because as we learned earlier, marketing sites are measurable. If I can measure it, I can track it. If I can track it, I can learn from it and gain an insight that can inform at least the future. At least version 1 of this, if not future versions. So the decision here is, how much do I show right now? That's the big question. How much do I show Healthcare OS now, knowing I'm going to be showing more of it in the future? I know I want to give a peek of it. I know I want to kind of give you a little bit of a taste, a little bit of a sprinkle, right? Like, we don't want to I don't want this to be like so vague that you're like, oh, this will never happen. There needs to be a little bit of something, but I don't know how much of that to give. I thought about even devoting a landing page to it where you can go learn about what Healthcare OS is, knowing that it's still a little bit, speculative is not the right word, prototype might be a better word, where it's still a little bit, we're kind of talking about how it works and why it works, but it's not like complete, and it's not like trying to definitely sell you on it like a later version might. So I don't know. I don't know how much of that to give. Right now, I'm leaning towards not doing that and just giving kind of a hint, a little sprinkle of, a mock-up of some sort, and like maybe a banner that says, coming soon or something along those lines. And I'm leaning towards that for two reasons. One is there's still a lot with Healthcare OS that still has to be figured out. Of course, that's what we all know that. But the second thing is, I don't know exactly what I would put on that page. I don't necessarily want to set expectations that this is a kind of speculative product. And I want to set the expectation that it's not real, but that it has every intention of being real should people be interested. And I don't know how to do that quite yet. And so I'm wondering if by giving a sprinkle of it and kind of giving us call to action around, signing up to know when it's coming or something along those lines, if that might give me the data to know who is interested and what they're interested in. So that's it for this week. A lot of marketing thoughts. I hope you learned something about marketing and branding. I think they're really interesting topics, and I think it's a really interesting thing that not enough people pay attention to. This was kind of a philosophical overview of both in some ways. I didn't really deeply speak to a lot of the brand decisions I'm making. But I am working on a new logo. I think I mentioned that several weeks ago. So I think I'm going to do a deeper dive into that in the next couple weeks. But I hope you like it. I hope you like this video. I hope you found it useful. If you like it, please give it a like on YouTube. Please subscribe. If you do that kind of thing, share it with people if you think they're interested. If you know physicians who are trying to start their own practice, I would love for them to get in touch with me. They can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or here on YouTube, or then go to the alloyhealthcare.org website, and there is some contact information there as well. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you real soon in the next video.